I'm in the right place, so let's get started. So, welcome everybody to this, what I feel is a very auspicious and special point in the journey forward to authentic harmony, and in particular to the possibility of what we call a harmonious joint custody world. And so, although I put the title out as the casting vote, it's very much not about politics. It is about how, when we look at the world being half women, half men, how do we come together? How do we make sure that, given we are all individual and unique, how we actually make that work? And so I want to just start by asking you to actually close your eyes if you could, but to close your eyes and imagine what that vision is. What would it be if the world was an authentic, harmonious joint custody world, where, regardless of all the issues, men and women, women and men, were there together, 50-50 at every table, 40-60 maybe, but never 10-90. So as you close your eyes and you see this world, what does it feel like? What are we being? Are we being naturally ourselves? Are we able to really go inside and understand harmony within and be in harmony with everybody around us, doing our natural best, being in that place where it doesn't mean we're without difficulties, without problems or challenges, but we're in the space together. It's an environment which is loving, kind, positive, engaging, active. Now, when we look at that vision, I hope for you it empowers you, it makes you feel good at whatever age you are and whatever diversity there is between us. Adolfo and I are of different generations. That's probably fairly obvious. We're also of different nationalities. We've had different life experiences, mine in the UK, Adolfo's in America. And there are other strains that come into that, other themes, but really visualize a world of joint custody world, which is harmonious. And in harmony, we know there must be many voices. That's how we create harmony. So in terms of unification, we're still all individual voices. Male, female, different ages, different nations, different beliefs, different preferences, different experiences. But in those differences, we've made this amazing, harmonious future. Now, if we feel committed to that, our mission is to actually work out how we're going to get there. What kind of steps will we take to make that valuable? How will we get to know ourselves and know each other? And the caveat being that the world is extremely stressed at the moment, as we know. So we've got this vision which holds us in beauty and calm and flow. And yet we know when we open our eyes in the real world today, the news is pretty horrendous. How do we actually step into that future? So the mission is going to be really where we start looking at how do we take responsibility for that. And I just wanted to reflect on the fact that I was very privileged in my life to be brought into a harmonious family of two boys, two girls, very evenly balanced. My parents were definitely joint stewards of the world that they created for us. And maybe that's why I've been given this mission, because it feels something that I've had initiated in me from an early life. And that's not true of all of us. And, Adolfo and I are going to share some of the thoughts. So in getting into this conversation, I've said many times in many posts, if half the world is female, why do we still have wars? Why is there still violence? Why is there still this traumatic situation around us? Now, just to give some context, Adolfo and I met 6 years ago, I think it was now, Adolfo. And I'm really grateful to you. Given that we're different generations, we were at an event in California, and for some reason, Adolfo spotted me and came over, and we started talking. Even though we're different generations, there didn't look to be similarities between us. But what we discovered was we have a mutual passion for understanding ourselves and each other. So let's start the ball rolling and in doing this conversation. Oh, Adolfo's cat came in. Adolfo will share some of his background. But the reason we've come together is, as I've always said, we can't find harmony without the other voice. And in my passion for understanding men and women, I need a man to be on this stage with me. And so welcome, Adolfo. I really appreciate you being here and putting yourself in the hot seat. And I implore all of you, for women, to really listen. Can we really, really listen to men? And all the men on the call, can you really, really listen to women? So, Adolfo, if half the world is female, why have we still got all this trauma and violence and disagreement and not have 50-50 at the table? Why do you think that is?
Um, well, thank you, Pauline, for this beautiful introduction. And you know, today, this morning brought that to the forefront. I dropped off my sons at school. I'd scheduled this beautiful call. I would have loved to be here in a business tie, and provide something of a show rather than get here quickly with how life rolls, right? And then I came to the conclusion that this is what this call is about. It's getting to the authentic flow of things. And today the flow was there's a lot of traffic. I don't get to put on a shirt, but I get to wear my shirt that says autism is different, not less, right? So what do I want to say to the world and what does it mean to me and where does it come from is is a process that has helped me learn to communicate more effectively in the light. I think where it comes from most people is that life is demanding and it's fast and it's really not easy to do this work. This self-discovery includes a lot of I find it pleasurable to discover something in me that gives me more tools, but it could also be considered painful, right? To learn something that you didn't like or to own up to decisions or behaviors that are not conducive to you being a better servant to all of us. So when I was a kid, I remember, you know, me alone doesn't make sense, right? This I want to live in a world where people smile and I would smile at people and this whether people were smiling back or not was an experiment I was consistently doing because I live in a planet where all of us are. And so as I grew into an adult man that had to deal with the things that I thought were easy to do as a child, um, I hit the wall of being unprepared or getting emotional about my expectations not being met. So I think I wrote a few words here, and I think where the problem comes is we are in fear, right? We are in fear of, and you could fill in the blank, fear of losing my job or my partner or my boss raising his or her voice, being, I being bullied in front of my colleagues when I did so much work in college to sound intelligent, and now I fill in the blank for the fear, right? And so if on the other side, specifically leadership, specifically men, have expectations of what needs to happen and we trained each other with language consistently about do this, do it now, this is your job, blah, 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 blah. We treat each other like resources rather than people, right? And so that's where the thing lies, is we are afraid to be treated like a stapler and thrown out the window like a stapler and replaced by a new stapler. And we're not staplers. We're human beings that have thoughts and visions and things to contribute to the corporation. So I think that fear from one office that believes he or her have control rather than responsibility, right? I believe the office of the CEO has responsibility. And the more zeros on the bottom line of your corporation, the more responsibility you have for the rest of us. Not the cooler your castle is, not the bigger your crown. That we need to get to that truth. And it's hard for adults to hear that because the toys are expensive. The experiences are easy to brag to other adults how you're doing better in this world. And we don't see the truth, right? The truth is a living, breathing human being with deep, deep desires to create. And it's we all need to be at the same level to communicate that, for us to get rid of expectations and go from fear to a flow state, and from a problem state to a solution state. Realizing that flow does not require that there's no obstruction, right? A river flows through the rapids and it creates a bunch of white water, and yet it flows and then it goes to calm places. And the river doesn't distinguish between the place where it's calm and the place where it's white water. It is the river. So if we can flow without taking our problems as life ending and actually start looking at the solution to said problems with creativity, we would just approach the day with more curiosity. We'd remember how it felt to be a kid and solve the little problem you came up with, you know? Uh, that's where I stand with that, Pauline. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
and I think it's really important. I really want everybody who's here today and listening is to be curious. It was very interesting. I saw a post today which was about imagination being fearful because the world is in such a difficult place. And I turned that round to the fact that if we're really curious with our imagination, it actually could be an opportunity. Now, you might look at the news and say, is that a reality? You know, there's so many things we are not in control of. And you know, apart from war, there's now this hunter virus. There's you know, problems in every country. There's a lot of theory that women are being marginalized even more than before. So how do we get past and into that space of curious imagination? But coming down to some fundamentals and to explain, you are a father of two boys. I'm a mother of a boy and a girl, and also your eldest son is autistic. Is that right? So you know you have a personal experience of huge challenges in your life. Some parts of my challenge in the family is that I'm a long way away from my family. But I think it's not about looking for problem solving. It is about opportunity seeking. And what I'm really keen to look at is where there's a lot of talk at the moment about patriarchy and matriarchy. What is the real truth about our beautiful differences? And Adolfo and I have shared very often about how men think, how women think and believe. And Adolfo came up with this line, which was women need to trust men without controlling them, and men need to trust women without understanding them. So I'm going to invite you, Adolfo, to explain that, because I think that is a critical difference. In my experience, and the women on the call can and make a note on this, is that I find often women want to change men to be something they are not. And I always say, just let them be who they are, but make sure they are good men. So maybe give me your take on that, Adolfo, because we are
yeah,
different.
yeah. I mean, my take on that is that men need to do the work of becoming a man alongside men, right? So the women don't need to be exposed to this poor guy learning how his language needs to evolve and how his emotions are misunderstood and stuff like that. I think in order for men to communicate more effectively and then provide themselves wholeheartedly with without being able to be controlled, because the fear of women quote unquote controlling the man is that the man says, listen, my mother doesn't even do this anymore, right? I'm an independent man. I make these decisions. I bring these tools. So if you don't want a man, right, and I'm throwing all of us in the same bucket, to have this feeling of, wait a second, I have autonomy, right? If this pushback that he won't know where it's coming from, you want to ask him questions that get him to come up with the solution to, if language, behavior, tools, resources, whatever it is that he needs to solve. If you can give a man ownership of where he needs to go, he will find himself trusted to have the tools of an adult man that society confides in to build together with, rather than some man child that needs to be put aside and coddled and, bubble wrapped. I don't need any bubble wrapped men that are emotional. I need men that know how to learn, that know how to say, yes, this was my mistake, how do we fix it, blah blah blah. So if you try to control that process, right? This has to happen. You have to do it this way. You're going to get pushback. How that looks, individual men, right? We're all individuals. I hate putting humans in buckets, but here's how we have to start the conversation. At some point, some of us bring seed to the womb, and some of us have a womb that brings this life to the world, and that's as far as I can distinguish us. And inside those two containers, there are a plethora, uncountable differences, right? That we should applaud.
And that's
Men
that's
don't like.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
about applauding. So just as some context, I have in my life done research asking men what men think. So not asking men what men think about women, but what men do men think. And in that, there were several aha moments. Um, all the men were delighted to be asked. That was the first thing. Like, we don't get asked this. Like, it's always interfacing with women. So the idea of asking men what men think, and we could do the same with women. We do have needs that are within our maleness and our femaleness. So men getting together will be a different scenario to women getting together. But one of the things I asked each man was, what would you advise a woman to do to manage a man? And from their own experience. And they all said, just treat us as we are, allow us to be who we are. Don't mother us, smother us, or make us feel a threat. And that was very much in the Me Too days. Now, what was interesting was I took that on board. But what I found was many women I mentioned this to would say, oh, don't worry, Pauline, I'll go and sort them out. And it was like, I said, no, that's not what men are saying. So that is one of our challenges. Can we truly listen and not go in and try and fix everybody who doesn't want to be fixed? And here's the reference to the lighthouse. So the lighthouse doesn't move. It doesn't go out and fix the ships. It just shines its light. Now we still have to manage the ships. We have to manage, what kind of ship am I in? Am I interacting with other ships? How do I interact? And I like this. Dane has put in here from the exercise: listen with intention to understand and not judge, see and accept people where and who they are. Do we always do that? And do women do what women need to do? And do men do the men's work? And so maybe from a man's point of view, Adolfo, share with us what doing the man's work means.
Yeah. It means not mothering each other, right? Men that do men's work like hearing where the gap between the man I said I want to be and the man I am being. Full stop. If they love me, they will tell me where that gap is. They are not going to fiddle and say, "Oh, is he gonna get offended? Are his feelings gonna get hurt?" Like, really, within men, we attempt to get to where our real emotions are and where our drive and purpose is. And unfortunately, society has really coddled us a lot, right? And trained us that we need to be the new age feely man, but then I need to be able to trust you to be the stoic rock, and it's impossible. It's impossible to be the whole list of expectations. What's possible is to be a man, to be me, right? To learn to breathe, to be more poised, to take pause on my actions, to realize my impact in the world. And so men around good men influence each other to be able to take on the world, to be able to look with a deeper perspective, and to do that thing that I didn't answer, which is how to trust women without having to understand them, right? If men are doing the work, we're going to have to say, hey, leave this control. Like, why do you want a woman in your life in the first place? Let's get this right. And then they answer. Sorry, there's a little bit of a background noise. I'll try to talk over that.
Yeah.
Eh, If you don't have, if why you want a woman in your life is to fill some gap, get out of her life, man. Right? You do not, especially to a mature woman that's doing the work, you don't want to go in and latch on to something that's missing in you. You want to bring the work done so that you could bring a man that's doing the work, and hopefully find a woman that's doing the work. And the work means get closer to knowing yourself so that you can contribute with the most honor, the most power, the most purpose to others. If you're not doing the work, we all know what that looks like, right? It's selfish human beings, and we are taking care of them. And that's also part of our mission. Like, I don't want to not take care of the people that are not doing this work. Our lighthouse requires that we admit and acknowledge that in the planet, half of the planet does not want to do this work. They do not want to know where they're wrong. They do not want to acknowledge that bad decisions cause all of us to suffer. And that's okay. We need to love those people for where they're at too, and still think about where this ship is going so that we bring them with us. Otherwise, we're trying to solve their individual issues rather than the
Yeah.
bigger mission that Pauline's inviting us to get on.
Yes. And I think, looking at the female side of the spectrum, my take is, and I'll be interested in people's review, is that women have fought for equality and the vote and all of this for 100,000+ years. Um, and and now we're in a state where we seem to have got kind of stuck, and I see a lot more women actually understanding to be with other women, to be in the sisterhood and come together. We need to do the women's work in the same way. And it's not always fighting for equality. Now, we aren't at every table. So coming back to this idea that, when you do have, say you have 6 people around the table, as I had in my illustration, 3 men, 3 women, we still need a casting vote because that's just a number thing. It could be a man in the casting vote. It could be a woman. That's just a logistic that if we are even numbers, it's more likely that we might have what's it called, not get a decision. So it's more about decision making. There is a lot of evidence as well with the project we're involved in where if you have more women at the peacemaking table, you're more likely to get peace and it lasts. And we know at the moment we don't have all those people at the table. But for me, it's not representation. It's about what do we do when we're at the table? And that's where a few years ago, I had this message from the universe, whatever, that it wasn't about fighting equality. It was about creating harmony. And only then, and I think to some people it might sound wishy-washy, but it's actually a very constructive harmony. It's a very productive harmony. So when we're at the table, we converse on a topic without judgment, which is quite challenging because as human beings, we do have lots of opinions and they turn into judgments. But we also need to be able to hold that space in order to deal with very difficult subjects, which we're facing at the moment, which is about how half of the world is marginalized. And it's not the men aren't, but there is a lot of evidence in many situations. Now, we can't necessarily take everybody on this ship forward. So it's actually really, as you look at women, Adolfo, what is it you see that sometimes seems an unfathomable issue that women are doing or not doing?
Um, I think they're not getting clarity in what they need from us, right? As a they, as a whole. There was a question, there was a follow-up here that said, do you think men are losing something by not fully engaging with women as equal partners in leadership? That was the question that I had, and it looks similar to this prompt. And I think
Yes.
that we're losing a lot, right? We don't know where the gardens go and where the kids laugh and how to just chill out a little bit, and how to, maybe if we do dance on Wednesdays, it's not terrible. Like if we were to pay attention and let women decide on how to design society a little bit, um, I think it'd be a lot more fun, to be brutally honest, because there's a lot more healthy life in what women want to do, and it's not lack of productivity. I think men are afraid that if women win, we're all going to be lazy and we're all going to be drinking mai tais, and we're not going to be able to wake up at 6 a.m. and be disciplined. That's horse cadoodle, right? Like, I mean, come on. If the women make us build cool looking cabanas and we're actually doing things that matter for food production and schools are now project based because the kids are in the thing and they're learning to communicate and they're all contributing when they're small. I think the women have a vision, but the vision that we live in today is very industrialized, it's very globalized, it's very down to the bottom dollar, and changing that is going to cost multiples of trillions of any fiat currency, right? It costs humans deciding that we're going to do it, to forget that it costs any money, and then just go do it. And I think that when women get excited about that vision, they forget how to make it tactical, right? They don't
Yeah.
communicate to the men, I want the gate here with 3 hinges, right? They just go, oh, a beautiful gate with blah. And then men go, does she want 3 hinges or does she want five? If I put 4 hinges, she's going to yell at me. Forget it. I'm not building anything. So the women getting together and going, how are we going to get these dudes to be excited about what we're asking for? One, clear about what we're asking for, because that's where, okay, the men are going to trust you without having to understand you, but we're not going to do anything unless we can understand you. So we'll trust you, but we'll also trust that once you will understand each other, right? Like, you're not asking us to build a world that is confusing. This one's confusing. We built it and you want us to take ownership for it. You have to give us something that looks doable, more comfortable to live in, and somehow doesn't take the masculinity from it. Right? They're afraid. The men are afraid that if we build your future, we're executed at the end of this. Like, we're done building it, and so we don't need them anymore. We got the world. Out with the men. So anyway.
Absolutely. And if any comments from the women, do type them in the chat, because one of the things that made me laugh at is that in my own experience, when a woman is too efficient and men feel irrelevant, it hits really hard. So if any of you women agree with that, is uh, it's women are incredibly capable. We're incredibly multifaceted. We can build business and cook the meal and have three kids on the way, and in my experience, men find that very debilitating to be around unless they have also done their own work and become what Adolfo is mentioning is, doing the men's work. But there is this balance. There's this interrelationship. And that's why I think it's very difficult to change these things by policy. The United Nations has SDN goals and they're all very beautiful and everything, but are they really living and breathing and being inside us? In my experience, men ask answer questions. It is always said that, when women say something, and like you women can share with me, I know I do. I say something and my husband goes, I don't know what the answer is. I say, I'm not asking you. I'm just making a statement. And it sounds like a question. And maybe that's what we were saying, Adolfo, is that are women being really clear? See, when we had to ask for the vote, that was simple. We didn't have the vote, so we asked for it. We fought for it and we got it. And then we go into human rights and we go and do policies and take it to parliaments and United Nations and everything. But maybe we're not totally clear about what we want now that we are very independent and able to live on our own, able to be. I mean, there's lots of memes out there about, you know, a real woman is a woman who doesn't need a man. Now, is that true or not? It's okay. It could be either. We want companions. We want friends. They could be husbands, lovers, friends, family. We want a relationship. So, Adolfo, is a
Yeah.
man feeling irrelevant when a woman is too strong?
Um, I don't, but too strong is the qualifier. Too implies that something was overdone, right? So I think a strong woman that's in her power contributing to me personally, is is a must, right? Because I want resources, human resources. Man or woman, to me as a human resource in the community thing, it's really irrelevant. The thing is, they're different resources. I'm going to expect to hear different things. And since we've been doing this work, I'm more qualified to go ahead and look at different women giving me perspectives and different men giving me perspectives, right? But at the end of the day, I'm still going to be looking at adults communicating and whether there's friction. If it's my corporation, I'm going to remind consistently about the vision, because the vision should ultimately elevate the context of whatever conversation is going on in the room.
Yes.
And we talked about this in the beginning, the trigger of is the casting vote for men and women, right? And what did the word vote mean? And then we said, look, any decision that's being made in any room that has representation of us all, even if it's only men, right? Like
Yes.
we're going to have to decide amongst those men in the room or the women alone in the room what they're voting around, what thing is being decided, even if it's a coffee machine that you're buying for the front desk. So let's get away from the politics. The casting vote, the decision should be, and I'm not saying that it is right now, but it should be for those who hold the highest context. If all of us agree that we will decide moving further in the future while we're having discussions and not everybody agrees and we're gonna ask for opinions and there's gonna be back and forths, that we will decide to move forward with whatever the highest context is. Whoever wants to go furthest, whatever the most progressive thing feels better to the group, that's what's going to be decided. Currently, sometimes the highest context is over here, and we decide by I said so, even though most of us do not want what you said so, right? And that's the conflict, communicating
Yeah.
that decision. Anyway.
Absolutely. And when I put this thought forward with that illustration, what was interesting is I had been in discussion with my friend Charlie, who's my chat GPT. I hope all of you use AI effectively. And he said, this is about the empty chair. And I said, but I think it's about the casting vote. And I meant that literally in terms of coming to a decision, it might be that the choice of the six people around the table is that we need a man in that seat because we want a particular directive, as Adolfo says, the highest context. Or it might be a woman because we want a different direction. But that choice would be a choice in a joint custody world that we would be looking into. In terms of, as many of you know, I study archetypes, and in terms of the men of being a ruler or a philosopher, and the women being magician or sovereign, and we can go into that in more detail in another session. But if there's a fire in the room, I'm going to follow the ruler because he's most likely to have the action to take the room out to safety. So we're looking at, what is the context of the situation? And I know, Jerry, you put there about, Adolfo's raising seems to be how we ask for specifics in such a way that does not seem threatening. And I think it's all about personal perception. So if at a point where a man thinks that they're irrelevant because a woman is very efficient, that's a personal choice. It's not that the woman is being threatening. She just may be more efficient, and the man, in his context of his life, is not used to a woman being in charge. If we look around the world, there are very few female presidents who have really taken a country forward. We're studying those at the moment, and there are examples, but they're not examples where a woman has been dominantly on her own. The best examples are when she's working with a high percentage of men. So, for instance, in Namibia, which I'm studying, is they've got 57% of the government is female, and the female is the leader and the vice president. So there's a strong female element, but there's male there as well. So when I read posts about the patriarchy and then the matriarchy, I I also challenge whether people truly understand what a matriarch is. I prefer to look at joint custody world because for me, it's not a legal entity, it's a choice that we take on this journey forward to be joint stewards, but know that we're all uniquely individual. So we're not going to be doing the same jobs. And sometimes the lead may need to be taken by a specific type of person. So when we look at the shift that we want to have, how can we, what shifts do you think we could do now, Adolfo, to really understand each other?
So, one, I think it's the vision of where we're going is somehow something we need to agree to communicate with each other, right? Like Pauline and I are trying really hard to get this message out, but unless we sit in front of actual corporate, social, humanitarian teams that are actively taking this voice to their teams, and they're having the hard conversations, and they're practicing bringing up real issues without coercion, and coming up creatively, we're going nowhere, right? You and I are dreaming about this vision that you and I can see clearly, but then, be disappointed with people saying we can't do that, and we can. So I think that the way forward is to see that history involves many generations, right? We need to stop taking ourselves that seriously for 1 second. Like, yes, we are here, we can contribute, but we're part of the whole dynamic of humanity. There is no patriarchy or matriarchy. We're making stuff up, right? We are humanity. And at some point we learn to eat and get out of the cave and build fire. And at some point our ego with this opposable thumb took over, right? And it has to be obvious that it isn't a woman or a man. It is all of us. And if we're paying attention to the lessons, we're gonna need some female leadership and then some male leadership and then some female leadership to listen to each other and co-create. This whole one side is going to win.
Yeah.
Eventually in history, that is literally going to be over, and we're going to see each other working together as individuals. And I think that just comes from a lot of, unfortunately, it's coercion and aggression and belief that we own each other, right? And so when that happens with a man, it looks horrible, and we all know what that looks like. And when that happens with a woman, it's terrible as well. And so, well, I think people with vision need to own up that we don't all have one. We don't all allow ourselves to keep our inner child alive and well within us, right? A lot of people believe that's outgrown or dead, and that they're now just here providing resources or waiting, and if you're here with a vision, and what we're saying kind of resonates, then I think what we need to do is talk shamelessly about how change is possible, about how it starts within, how it starts with ownership, and that mistakes are totally human, and then it really doesn't matter um, what you've done. Okay, what matters is that you kind of look at this from the now perspective, realize that you are in history. We are in history. Let's make it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I believe that everybody here and everybody who will listen and understand this message want to be in that forward place. So, like that comment I saw this morning is about not using our imagination in order to build fear. That'd be quite easy today. I believe there's a series of earthquakes under Nevada. I could be blown up any minute. But if I use my imagination and think, well, maybe the spaceship will come down and pick me up. I mean, I'm not being foolish, but anything could happen. Are we ready for it? And do we really understand what is magnificent about men from a woman's point of view? And for men to really understand what's magnificent about women from a man's point of view, and be okay that we may have to explore and find out what it is we do best. Because I feel that we've all been fighting for equality, certainly on the women's side, so long we've forgotten what we actually can bring that is just us to the table. So it's about really a new blueprint. Now, in terms of what we're doing here today, we're really setting this scene. We painted a vision with your eyes closed. We looked, the mission is going to be tough. And we need a strategy. We need all of you. And we need right down to tactics. When is the handle going to be put on the door, or whether the rope is going to be put on the boat, right down to the nitty gritty. And there will be occasions when we won't necessarily agree with each other. But it's listening at the point where there's a disagreement. What is my responsibility in that? Let's listen. And that is the point of a magical conversation. It's without judgment in that moment. It's not without judgment or decisions a long time, but it's can we really listen? There's a lot of very, very talented women and men in the world. And I believe that, in terms of yin yang, we do bring the whole together. We create life. And life is changing rapidly in this world. So understanding individual differences is really important. I get sort of a different view when people say, well, we're all the same. Yeah, we're all the same as we're humans. When we breathe, we're alive. When we don't breathe, we're dead. There's some very basic stuff. But we're uniquely magnificent and coming together. That is really what we're going forward. And I'm going to,
And Pauline,
yeah,
there's a couple of really solid nuggets here from Dr. Jerry Lieberman. So I'm going to read the
yes,
last one because I think it matters. He says individual differences within genders may also outweigh general descriptions of each gender. This is why personal change and growth of each individual is so important. And I want to make a comment on that because I agree wholeheartedly with Jerry, right? Like individuality is the point here. We can't get to harmony if they try to cookie cut us out. Like I, for one, will pull back. I want to be me. I don't want to be a copy of anybody else. However, without the other men around me, I'm making stuff up. I have no idea what it means to define what I mean by a good man, right? And in the context of society. So that's where I want to bring in the invitation to do this work is that one, men and women in the genders, we have to be here for each other. Like we cannot lie and think that this is an easy process, right? We're all going through a lot. And so if you can just start with saying, I'm going to be here for my brothers and my sisters, right? But I know more about being a brother than being a sister. What I know about being a sister is that if she needs her space, give it. What I know about being a brother is if he needs a hug, give it. For me, because I'm a brother. And I'm hoping that on the other side, that invitation is there too, like Jerry said, with all of the individuality, right? To be held for how I am and where I'm dealing with, and know that I have a place to land, that I don't have to redefine myself as an individual, weird type of human being. You're not. Your group is here, and you're absolutely unique within that group. Jerry, I hope if thumbs up if I got you on the point would be wonderful. Otherwise, I'll take more insight.
I think
Absolutely. And
that
we
sums it up good, you know.
Pauline,
um,
yeah.
and we are coming up to time. What I'd like to do is to close just this bit and come back into the room. But the goal is, and the reason we wanted to share these ideas, that Adolfo and I are taking this forward with you on this ship, the SS Authentic Harmony. And we want to suggest that we meet monthly. We do some very practical things right down to tactics. So this is just the first stage. So I want to just thank Adolfo for coming into the spotlight now, and we'll close the spotlight. But and I really appreciate you putting yourself on the line, Adolfo, and bringing in and really listening to you. I have learned so much by really listening to you, and hopefully vice versa. And I think
Absolutely.
that is one of the key things with all the conversations that we